So great to be here. Can you hear me okay in the back? To be in this sacred space. Thank you, James, for all that you do. And I'm delighted to be introducing two dear friends, wonderful poet translators. I'm going to read the two blurbs that I wrote for Richard Fein's two most recent books. Richard Fein's lyric genius is marked by one central, searching endeavor to bring English in earshot of its rhyme with Yiddish. It's the kind of necessary and forthright exploitation a serious poet delights in. And it starts with a curious boy on vacation in the Catskills. When a curious boy on vacation in the Catskills looked way down into the stream, Neversink, and all he saw was Yiddish letters. The poetry was writ in that childhood water, the cross currency of pure recollection and intensely exacting concentration. And now this book of a lifetime, Dear Yiddish, which is also Dear Yeats, and all of it Richard's way of translating himself into the magisterial poet he has become. The prior book, Losing It, which is also for sale, begins with this poem, The Mouth of Uncle Max, and I'm going to quote the first three lines. The brassy glare of a gold tooth, socketed in his lower gum, branded the Yiddish my Uncle Max expelled, his nugget tooth exhibiting an alien luster. That alien is quite beautiful. English and Yiddish are the pincer jaws of this magnificent book that holds us in the grip of its linguistic conviction, even as it expresses a lyric disenchantment. Richard Fein's poetry is the gold standard of how a poet translator can be both so deeply at home and so unsettlingly estranged in two forms of speech, as when the Yiddish words expelled from an uncle's mouth take on a sublimely uncanny alien luster in English. This work is the work of an American master, Richard Fein.
It is special just to be here. It's special. It's special to be here. Even just to come in and to buy a book. Nothing holy about it. Thank you, George. It's been many years that I have been reading with George, my friend, my teacher, has shown me so much. I learned from him. I think the feeling is mutual, and the love is mixed up in that mutuality. He has taught me so much and has taught so many others. And a pleasure to read with Gary. We're so different. My father's house has many mansions. I think that's what Lincoln said. It applies to poetry. I'll begin with this one. Can you hear me in the back there? Okay, good. I'll try to keep it up. The knickered harbor master. After rain, or after the spray fans out from under the belly of the sanitation truck, a stream appears where the curb sets into the street, a sudden channel in front of my father's shoe store. Then I launch my ex-popsicle stick in the water where it maneuvers around tires and sodden, emptied cigarette packs and crumpled bergs of cellophane. Or it gets stuck by all that rubber and trash, and I have to poke my oval craft around that blockage, coaxing my thin ellipse toward the sewer drain down at the corner near where the bookies hang out. And after I free my sliver to move it on its way again, I wonder if at the end I will rescue that float of mine from the grating where it teeters on iron, air, the water, before finally tipping into the wet darkness below. Shall I rescue my naked skull only to bring it back to launch it again at the base of the curb in front of my father's store, navigating that voyage once more? It all depends on I don't know what. The lure of the stick wavering in the swirl on the slotted grid, the test, the prod, the same skiff along the crowded river, or the whim to drift over to another street for a game. The next poem I'd like to read in honor of David Ferry, our great poet, our great loss, our great friend. We all miss him. He gave us so much in his very being and in his writing. David Ferry at the senior residence. I called David once again to read poems with him and in stupid jocularity begin, "How you doing, old boy?" Only to hear him shoot right back, "Oh boy, all right." And I immediately wanted to kick myself. I felt I offended, had taken liberties, never speaking in the chatty familiar with him before. I didn't understand the tone I took. Why sound so fraternally chirping? We're friends, not buddies or sidekicks. As usual, he immediately asked me to start off with one of my own. This is a new one. I let off. Though I didn't let on, I was anxious about his reception. Truth to tell, every time I read him one of my own, I am anxious about his reception. His eyes at a loss, I heard him settling in his ear to hear me. Heard that assertive resonating alongside a silence, perhaps assessing what didn't quite succeed. Quick as he is to pick up on things, rhythms and tones and implications. Did I ever read you Mary in Old Age? He asked. No, please do. I've read it, but I don't think I've heard you read it before. The print on my screen has been enlarged, he explained, making it easier for me to read my poems now. And once more, I was invited into his observational intimacy that shifts from page to throat when he reads his own stuff. His compassion for that confusion that dogs us. I was floored. His reading, evincing Tom Gunn's praise of David's ability to express so nobly and troublingly the inside and outside of the disordered psyche. Unsparingly clement to his fellow denizens of no country I know. His poems attend their frequencies of suffering and realize the sorceries of their confusions. That old boy vanished as I listened to his reading, evoking Mary's bafflements. I was floored by his tormented ex-colleague rising and descending in an elevator shaft as she repeats the passages of her anguish. His poem swept me past my own clumsiness into another realm. And he ended with, let's do it again. Call me back sometime and we'll do it again. I hung up and left my study and went back into the living room and passed my wife, still napping in her special chair, which tilts backwards and forwards and has a rest for her legs. That chair from which she cries, hello, hello. As I know, neither of us has the words for that conversation we will never have. Gary asked me to read this, and it was an honor to be asked. And so I will. To a woman remembered, I will die just as you will. You and I, unknown to ourselves and to each other when ears can't hear or tongue make sounds. Even a young poet who longs to lay a girl as I did you will in time lack everything. All shapes will disappear from my mind, even the ghost of you lingering there, your voice coming down the stairwell. Is that you, Richard? It's me. Memories, versions, voices come to an end. The stairs, rooms, buildings, all gone too. You on the third floor, buzzing me in. I'd like to read my translation of a Yiddish of a Yiddish poem. This is a poem by Anna Margolin, a Yiddish poet. We went through days. We went through days as if we went through wind-blown gardens, blossomed and ripened and practiced at playing with life and with death. Dark cloud and nerve and fantasy, each of them in our words. And among the stubborn trees in summer rustling gardens, we branched out into our one and only tree. And evenings spread themselves with a heavy, darkening blue, with painful desires of winds and falling stars, with straying, caressing glow over twitchy grass and leaf, as we weaved ourselves in wind, soaked up in that night blue, and were like joyful animals and like crafty, frisky gods. Hmm. I want to conclude with this one, with the title poem. Dear Yiddish, for Larry Rosenwald. How long, dear Yiddish, how long must I be obsessed by you? Have you always been semblance of my own poems hiding from me? In my early rejection of you, I saw the shapes I feared, scorning you because of what your scripts and sounds might reveal to me. You were capable of translating my fears, if only I had let you. Now you have become the language I opened up to in middle age into old age. You now the language I am impelled to embrace, yet can never fully grasp. I know you by not knowing you fully. Our coitus incompleteth. I need you, I translate you, I speak you, I hear you, I touch you, I write you, yet I can't really possess you. I always struggling to possess you. Even as I embrace you, you slip away from me. This, the two-step of our being. You call on me to learn about myself through the process of learning you. Your lines evidencing and transforming old dismissals in me. I return to poetry by translating you, my way of priming the pump toward that rush that comes from my own channels and deposits. Don't leave me now. You, the gift that returns me to myself. You, the fullness spread across your page from edge to channel, channel to edge. Even when I fear a provinciality about you, and then confide, this must end. We can't go on like this forever. So many other enticements out there, so many other lures and bodies for us to know, to welcome. I can hear you in your knowing feral way. Babosne, babosne. It would seem I am afraid of you taking over my life. It would seem, yet I must confess, it is a miracle to me that you can work yourself up into a poem, considering your origins and all that wariness I fostered in our early minglings. Yet here we are now, your words delivering themselves up to me. Here we are, you calling me to enter, I concurring, staying in you. And out of this caress, we render each other, interlacing signs between us, new signs from within our aging, old signs from when we first met. Dear Yiddish, you are also the markings on me since childhood. You, the memories that never get erased, like brown streaks and iron scorched on a bedsheet. Dear Yiddish, I return to you late, but not too late. Dear Yiddish, if you were a woman, I would call you Kitty Hawk, or translate you into Quetzala Falk, for it is from you I take off, from you thrust into speech, through you moving further into my English. Dear Yiddish, what a language labyrinth we have created. You bear yourself to me. What transactions, and yet I can't fully possess you. You must be my destiny. That must be it, if I have a destiny, just as every poem I write is also a destiny, new, yet also a revisitation. My whole life has been en route to you, my effort to translate you. Let there be no failure to touch each other, no qualm or reluctance. Sound me out, cling me on, sound me out. Dear Yiddish, show me how there can be no more doubt or shame or distrust between us, or how even through these sensations we might touch each other anew. Open me to your origins, your fate, your maneuvers in the face of all you defied, you suffered, you desired, you ventured. And I, in turn, will be impelled to do the same, to reach you, both through my translations of you and through my own poems, both prompted into being by that life of candor we promote in each other. Dearest Yiddish, your figurations, those fluent casings, materialize the making of poetry. Your flecks, lines, arcs, even little points, modifying sounds, meaning. All your flexings, performances on the page possess shape-sound effects. Physically, gift me with your diminutives, skepticisms, blessings, curses. Your very cut, voice, and syntax tremble like history in my ear. Even those letters of yours that change form when they appear at the end of a word seem special to me in my old age in late poems. I must continue to enter you precisely because of all those years when you wanted to give yourself to me, but I didn't know how to live, how to respond within your presence, within your lair. My dearest Yiddish, how long it has taken me to say to you, I still don't know you and must return to you, a mystery here, a comprehension there, and find in my translations of you, the making of a new fate between us. Our facing texts moving from their opposite edge across the pages as if they seek convergence in their mutual crease made from the binding. Sound me out, cling me on, sound me out. Thank you.
The title, Being There, concisely and exactingly focuses the essence of this brilliant collection by Gary Whited. Being, as in the superbly lyrical translations of the great pre-Socratic philosopher-poet Parmenides, there, as in the austere beauty of the prairies of Montana, where Gary is from, and the comma that looks both ways, both conjoining and differentiating. The perfect inscription for Gary's acutely receptive and marvelously supple poetry. In this poet's gifted Virgilian hands, farm labor is both Seamus Heaney-like in its rich linguistic texture and profoundly Greek in its metaphysical understanding of necessity, ananke. Whitehead's sensitivities as a trained philosopher and psychotherapist are everywhere in evidence, but it is poetry that addresses what for him is the essence of his calling, and what the ancients once termed the medicine of sorrow. In his poem, Deep Disturbance, what begins as a childhood recollection of castrating a calf ends with these sublimely moving lines. Quote, one of those body memories psychotherapists search for in trauma work, when naming how the body hangs on to its history without words, stored in the tissue, its cells tied together in knots, and when this one awakens, unties itself, I hear the calf's helpless cry. He hears the pain of his fellow suffering creatures as he hears Parmenides in the stones of Elia, and hears the unspoken truth of life in the stoicism of his hard luck rancher father. When Gary Whitehead translates the ancient Greek language, it could be speaking directly from his father's mouth in the wide open meditative spaces of Montana. Quote, the name for what alone is fully untroubled is to be, end quote. It troubles his listening enormously, Gary Whitehead.
All my things in place here. Thank you, George. Thank you so much. It touches me. And thank all of you for being here. Thank you so much. And thank you, James, around the corner there, for all you do to make this happen. And thank you, Richard. It's an honor to get to read with you. Mm. You want this up? Is that better? Okay. You hearing me okay? Awesome. So I would like, in the same vein as Richard invoked, I'd like to invoke the presence of David Ferry here and dedicate my reading to his memory. He was so important to this place and to many of us here. So I just want to honor him in this reading. He was so instrumental. He was such a support and a guide for me in making this book happen. His translation inspired the way I finally managed to render the Parmenides lines into what has become a version of something like iambic pentameter. That's a gift from David. And if you know, I want to say, if you're wondering why there are poems from the prairie and a translation of Parmenides' fragments woven together, I'll just say briefly that when I grew up on the prairie, where a lot of these poems come from the memories of that time, I had these experiences for which I had no words, nor did I have anyone with whom to speak of what I experienced there. There was this sense I had in my body, not in my mind or my words, of how everything hung together, how everything was one and whole and together. And it was so varied and complex and beautiful. And touching a dried stick in the mud of Shadwell Creek was as beautiful as hearing a song that I loved, and everything hummed, everything sang. So that's how uh, this happened, that when I encountered Parmenides in graduate school, and I first made my effort to do the translation, I suddenly felt like I could make sense of my childhood. So that's how this comes together. Uh, I want to just say, by the way, thanks to my dear friend Rich Borowski here, who did a wonderful review of this book. I think Rich has a couple copies of it here. Should anyone be interested later, you can check with Rich. And yeah, thank you, Rich, for that. Mm. So I'll start on the prairie. First, astonishments. I cannot name what carries itself in the curl of the pig's tails trembling as they arrive at the V-shaped feed trough. When I come near, bucket full of ground oats, heavy against one leg, bucket of kitchen slop splashes at the other. Oats first, slop on top. I listen close as their rubbery snouts plunge and snort into the feast. Up high, the soft, steady voice of wind sings above this slurping, presses its shoulder against the windmill's blades. The giant wheel turns in circles. Each time it goes round, its metal to metal squeak and grind carves the sky in half, pushes the wobbly wooden stick down into the well beneath the ground, then lifts up water. Each time it descends, the long stick bends so that I fear it will break in two, but it doesn't. I watch the clear water catch the light as it spills from the end of the iron pipe into the wooden tank, where stands our one Holstein who gives us milk. In her slow cow way, she quietly lowers her dark nose and curved mouth into the glistening water, drinks the cool liqueur into her bony body, silent, but for the dim, throaty sounds her gullet makes as she swallows. Her tail swishes side to side, pushes away flies that feed on her rugged hide. I stand still as a stone, look for where it all begins or ends. My gaze travels from her tail to the pig's tails, back and forth, gathers in the wind, the windmill, the water, and morning's shimmering light, until the now silent Holsteins drunk her fill, and the pigs have slicked their trough. Mm. So this next poem goes back to the prairie, but comes to Jamaica Plain, and it's a way to enter Parmenides. It's called Horses Could Take You There. If I could remember if I could remember it and the name of the horses, but I don't, until stuck in traffic on the Jamaica Way, and the red tail lands on a nearby limb. The horses' names start to come back. Goldie, Red, Lightning, Lucky, Blue, Babe, and Spike. The young sharp-shinned I killed at the creek back then, shooting BBs again and again. The young hawk perfectly still, my body filled with sorrow. Sound of my mother's accordion, the only thing that soothed. If I'd ever believed in a God, this would be the time to unfold it. Travel to the other world was possible, according to Parmenides. Horses could take you there. So quiet, the way Spike loped across the summer pasture. And now I'd like to invite you into Parmenides, into the first fragment of Parmenides, which is one of the longer ones, and it's a story about travel to the other world. But I want to just say a couple things about Parmenides. He was known for the practice of stillness that he learned from the ancient Phaeacians, of who he was a descendant. And the practice of stillness involved taking someone into a lair where there was no light, no sound, no senses. And the purpose of taking someone into the lair was to guide them to the other world. And the reason for taking someone or guiding someone to the other world was twofold. It might be for personal healing, and the other reason was to meet the goddess and be given healthy laws to bring back with which to govern the community. And Parmenides was known for his excellent governance. And in his time, he established, through his governance, he established peace that lasted for 2 centuries, which was really striking in that time and in that place, with the warring Spartans living right next to where he lived in the town that at his time was called Elia. So I want to say we could use the goddess giving us some healthy laws right now. I just want to honor the connection here and to say Parmenides has a lot to offer us right now. So this is Parmenides fragment 1. Horses carry me as far as my longing can reach. Transport me to the many-voiced road of the goddess that carries the one who listens through vast silence. On that way I am carried, for the very wise horses know where to go. They pull the chariot at full gallop, and maidens lead the way. An axle blazes in its sockets, urged forward at both ends by its whirling wheels, sends forth the eerie sound of a whistle you hear traveling to the other world. These young women, daughters of the sun, as they leave the house of night, throw back veils from their faces with their hands and hasten to convey me into the light. There stand the gates of the ways of night and day, enclosed with a lintel above and a stone threshold below. These ethereal gates themselves are covered with great doors whose alternating bolts are held fast by Decay, goddess of justice, who lets nothing past her. Speaking gentle words, the maidens cunningly persuade her to swiftly push back the bolted holder from the great doors. As those gates fly open, they spin on their bronze axles fitted by nails and rivets, turn in their sockets one then the other to make a wide opening. Straight through them the maidens guide the chariot and horses along the broad way. The goddess welcomes me warmly, takes my right hand with her right hand, addresses me, and speaks this story. O youth, linked with immortal charioteers, and with horses carrying you to our home, welcome. It is not at all an evil fate sending you forth to come this way, far from the beaten paths of humans, but rather it is your nature, the order of things, and your deep urge to listen. It is necessary that you hear all things, both the untrembling heart of well-rounded truth and the opinions of mortals which hold no true belief. Nevertheless, you will listen to these also, how it is necessary that things as they appear be acceptable, as they continually penetrate all things. So there's Parmenides. I love Parmenides. And a couple of years ago, I, along with my dear friend, partner Sabina, traveled to Italy, to southern Italy, where Parmenides lived in the village on the southwest coast that at the time was called Alia. So this poem came from that visit. Touched by stones, I walk where Parmenides walked, among the ruins of walls fallen since his time, stones that remain because they can, because they are stones, and in their way speak something we cannot know, but be touched by if we listen in stone. Better maybe to say they stone, give them the power and standing of a verb, one among the many chiseled down to a noun, spoken over and over. That way we turn verbs, nouns, repeating them until they fall down, as these walls have fallen. And now we mostly only remember, the way a noun might remember the verb it was when first spoken, spoken into being. I feel the stones awaken, begin, how odd, to listen, or I imagine it so. Could it be they recall through my seeing, my listening, and my imagining how it was they came to be the walls that once stood here, upright and sturdy, each one lifted by gifted hands, placed on top of the stone beneath, becoming a house, a bath, a temple, these walls. I see him clear as day, Parmenides walking among the tilted stones, offering his right hand in welcome. And I don't quite know if I imagine it, remember it, or if he walks here too, right now, beside this water that flows, flows from the spring above that gave this place its name, Paella. So I'm going to go to Parmenides fragment 2 and just the first two lines of it, which are lovely. And just imagine the goddess speaking to any of us here. Come then, I will tell you, and you, having heard the story, give heed to it and carry it safely home. That's beautiful, isn't it? Come then, I will tell you, and you, having heard the story, give heed to it and carry it safely home. And now I want to read a follow-up poem that responds to that, but I'm also reading this because Richard invited me to read this poem. So here's the poem. Thanks for asking me, Richard. Right there. Wind whistled through the narrow slits between the fence posts' long splinters, where there was nothing that I could see. Only a flute's sound of nature's making from the long standing in dry prairie air of any wooden post, and a farmer's need to have the post stand still long enough that to my young boy's sense of things seemed to be forever. It delighted my eyes and my fingers to touch something that lived right there inside where forever might arrive. And there I'd go on many days to touch, to listen, to see that very nothing and hear that single forever. And on days when I needed to, that were many, I'd hold my cheek right there where nothing and forever mingled in that way that wind knew to make audible, and to signal, it seemed maybe only to me, to signal that if I longed for what was far away, my longing could soothe me, starting at my cheek where it touched a body that knew to stand still and to wait and to sing and singing to weave nothing and forever into dancing somewhere that was nowhere but in that longing. Hmm. You can perhaps get the impression that fence posts were important to me. I often think of the fence posts or remember them as little signals that maybe way back there, sometime when I was stumbling around as a kid, Parmenides was saying, over here, the fence posts have a message for you. So I like to think of it that way. So I'd like to offer you a little bit of fragment 8, which is the longest fragment we have of Parmenides' poem. Nobody knows how long the original poem was. We have 19 or 20 um, fragments, and you know they speak so brilliantly. And why we have only those, I don't know, but those are the only fragments we have. And in this fragment 8, Parmenides speaks of his experience and his sense of being. Ta'an is the Greek, and it gets translated as being, or it gets translated as what is. Um, Lots of different ways that it's been translated, and I'll read just a few lines from it. Here are the opening lines of fragment 8. And one utterance of the way still is left, that it is. Listen to this. On this way are very many signs that being is birthless and indestructible, for it is whole-limbed and unmoved and without end, not ever was it or will it be, since it is now all at once, one continuous. And a little later in fragment 8, he gives us this other beautiful image. But since there is a last limit, being is complete from every side, like the body of a well-rounded sphere, equal in the struggle from the middle in all directions. I love that image. And so I'll go back to the prairie now and to the poem in the book called Bull Butte. It's a poem in two parts. Bull Butte was the tallest thing around. It was up beside our summer pasture to the north of us and a little bit to the west. And it was always there. It stood up really high. And on the prairie, on that rolling prairie, when you got up on top of Bull Butte, you could see forever. And it was a wonderful place to go. So Bull Butte, part one. Standing still, as long as always, it spoke legends from up high, always there, north and west of our barn, looking over us. How I knew I was there, not there. Our horse-drawn wagon carried us west to the little schoolhouse across the creek from the butte. Our teacher, Jenny Lozinski, at the door, bell in hand to summon us. Its sound made the butte feel both near and far. Before and after school, chores waiting. Worn dirt path carried us to the barn. Hungry animals watching for us. Glance west, north. There it was, and was how I knew where I was. Humble the barn, dark at night, home to the unseen ghosts I feared. Humble the chores, bucket of oats to the horses, dusty ground grain to the cow, fresh milk to feral cats, hay to all the four-leggeds, water, always water to us all. Back to the house, bucket of fresh milk in one hand made me wobble. Butte over my right shoulder steadied me. It was to my part of earth what North Star was to my slice of sky. Part two. Last summer, I returned to visit, climb to its top, touch its south-facing sun-warmed sandstone. I remember something never quite forgotten, never not remembered. Hands firm against one of its wind-shaped curved shoulders, feet against its ledge. Unexpected vibrations enter my arms, move up my legs. I swear I feel Earth's core ablaze below. I want that, not to have it, but to be it, and being it, to open, to vibrate, become molten, not separate and not part of everything, but everything. Hmm. How are you doing? You have any more listening in you? Or a little bit more? I'll give you part of fragment 12. This is later in the poem, and Parmenides is talking about the nature of things and how the earth and the skies, the heavens, and so on are arranged, and so he says, "For the narrower bands are filled with pure fire, and the next ones with night, and in the midst of these a portion of flame is sent forth. In the middle of this, the goddess steers all things." The goddess shows up all over the place in Parmenides. In the middle of this, the goddess steers all things, for everywhere she begins sexual mingling and the painful drama of birthing, sending the female to mix with male, and again the other way around, the male with the female. And back to the prairie and to my youth and one of my initiations there. This poem is called It Goes On, and it's timely. It's the time of year when it's birthing calves back on on the ranch. So this poem is that. It goes on. This time I'm 14, and he says, it's your turn. When the next contraction hits, her body groans. Its sound someplace between pain and pleasure passes between my own ribs. One foot appears, not two. Naked to the shoulder, between contractions, I reach in. Blind hand finds what I've already seen, only one front hoof. I reach deeper, fingers swimming upstream, as if entering a dream. The cow seems miraculously not bothered by my presence inside her. Then it comes, next wave of her push. She grips my arm with her birth canal, nothing more sure of itself. All four of her legs stiffen, and as her moan cleaves the air, I'm suddenly stilled inside her. Only minutes ago, she tried to run us down. Now I've become part of her. Smell of winter's straw, manure, dirt, and wet cow's tail, all of it so close to my face, there is no room to doubt this world. An unexpected peace enters my body. Inside her dark, the other leg touches my farthest finger, which cannot move until her contraction ends. The moment she relaxes, I reach deeper, grab the folded knee with my feet braced against the ground, push the small body back where there's more room, all the way to where I find the backward foot, grip its slippery hoof, flip it forward to join the other, lace my fingers around the leg bones, tighten my grip, and wait. When it comes, I pull with her push, my arm as intimate with her as strange to itself, little one sliding into sight, two front feet, legs, pink nose, white face, ears slicked back, long red body, all of it sliding onto the exhausted straw. So I'd like to close with a poem, not from the book, but it's a poem that is written in honor of David Ferry. And the poem started coming to me the day that David passed away. And I was coming back from the Mount Auburn Cemetery along the Charles River, and the wind had settled and the water was perfectly still, this beautiful reflecting of everything, including the footbridge. So this poem is responding to David's well-known poem, Down by the River. My poem is called Evening by the River, and there's an epigraph that comes from David's poem. It's this line: people beside the river are watching the boats. Evening by the river. The footbridge's arches look up at themselves from the near perfect still water below, as if completing their work for the day. But of course, they won't stop holding the bridge through the night for passers-by to keep walking somewhere, wherever it is they are going to be going. Odd how I take comfort in knowing that I don't know, not in what it is I don't know, but that it's there, as if it meant to hold me up as I cross to where it is I don't know I am going to. You can't get there from here, I'm told they say up in Maine when someone stops to ask for directions. And I nestle my want to know inside this little joke, or whatever it is, and I don't even know what the joke means. Maybe it's just an expression to tease someone wanting to get somewhere they don't know how to get to. Maybe, as David might say, Something in us lives there, inside the curve of that not knowing. And something we don't yet see glides through, the way a boat might pass beneath this bridge, maybe sometime in early morning, sometime when no one is here, as I am just now, to see it. And it won't ever be known, I guess, if no one sees it. But maybe a wake will ripple the water, signal that someone has slipped between the curves of arch and arch looking up at itself, an almost indiscernible glimpse into what lives inside what we do not know, that gate, we might say, to over there. Thank you.
I want to say thank you for the wonderful introduction, George. Thank you for the beautiful readings, Richard and Gary. Please let's give them a round of applause. Thank you all for coming. We have some books for sale over here. People will be signing books. And everyone can please move your chairs up against one of these three walls. Please and thank you. Thanks.